What's up gamers, welcome back to my channel. Nahida is a 5-star Dendro Catalyst unit, and honestly, we all know who she is. Her reputation far exceeds her at this point. Being the Dendro Archon, it's only natural that her kit would embody Dendro at its finest, and she's the apex of the Dendro element to this day. At least top 3 supports in the entire game in my opinion. I'd honestly say it's Farina, Nahida, and Shilonin, probably. Shilonin or Kazuha in the top 3 these days. The reason Nahida holds this place in the meta is for 2 reasons: her element and her elemental skill. Dendro is similar to Hydro in that the reactions the element itself allows for makes it so that it's really hard for a Dendro unit to be bad. Unless you're Kave, unfortunately, but even he can be a struggle Dendro driver. You can see it in the background footage, he can clear. We'll talk more about that later though. With reactions like Hyper Bloom and Quick Bloom that absolutely ruin single target and even AoE chambers, Nearly Bountiful Bloom, which is one of the most violent AoE teams to date, Aggravate, which saved many Electro lives, Spread, which doesn't really exist anymore but it's still a viable option, and Burgeon/Burning, which is finally starting to get its time in the spotlight with recent releases like Emily and Kaniche. All it takes is a single press or short hold of her skill, depending on the situation, to mark and link all enemies near her with the Seed of Skanda for 25 seconds. Considering her skill has at most a 6-second cooldown on her hold version, this has infinite uptime so long as you can swap to her every 25 seconds, or can swap freely mid-rotation back to her to reapply the mark to freshly spawned enemies. The mark will trigger Trikarma Purification up to every 2.5 seconds at base when reactions are triggered on marked enemies or they take damage from Dendro cores like Hyper Bloom and Burgeon. This interval can be manipulated by her burst, which we'll discuss next, but we really need to unpack this skill first. With at max a 6-second cooldown, Nahida can mark every enemy on screen with a Dendro mark that will continuously deal and apply Dendro from off field, literally handling all of your Dendro application needs in a matter of seconds. On top of this, her skill applies 1.5 gauge units of Dendro, which is more than you'll find with other Dendro units, meaning you can trigger almost twice as many cores and can enjoy an almost consistent Dendro aura in some teams. This can be an issue for VV swirlers like Kazuha and Sucrose, but there are workarounds for this. Considering that you won't have an issue swirling off Burning, Cryo and Dendro auras coexist, and you wouldn't really want to swirl Hydro for offensive purposes in a Bloom team, it's mainly an Electro swirl issue. This can be mitigated by running double Electro, so Chlorad Fischl for example, and or remembering to apply Electro before you apply Nahida's mark for your initial swirl, and focusing on timing your swirls if you can apply enough Electro. It can be tricky, but it is very much possible. Outside of Aggravate swirl setups, her extra Dendro application only means more reactions, which means more damage on all enemies around you with the press or short hold of her skill for the next 25 seconds. It's actually pretty insane. Her burst configures her skill's behavior based on the elemental types in your party. It'll deal more damage for up to 2 pyro characters, but at the same time, the configurations themselves don't really matter too much, so consider her burst to be a neat little buff to herself. Use it when you can, but since her skill carries her kit, it genuinely doesn't matter if you can't. But it does have permanent uptime like her skill though, so that's great as well if you can battery her properly. Her first passive is what allows her burst to transfer 25% of the teammate's EM with the highest amount to the active character in her burst radius, up to a max of 250 EM. Considering that her burst nearly covers an entire Abyss chamber, it's basically turned into a free EM buff, but since it leeches from whoever has the highest EM stat, you can do what I did personally and a lot of others did, which is throw as much EM on Nahida as possible to ensure she'll be the one sharing, or lean more into her damage, and rest assured that if you play with another character that scales with the M, like Kuki Shinobu, Raiden, Toma, etc., they'll be the ones sharing. Her second passive turns every point of elemental mastery she has beyond 200 into a damage bonus percent and crit rate percent buff for her Trikarma purification ticks, up to 80% bonus damage and 24% crit rate. This helps makes her damage more consistent and helps you with your build a lot if you really plan to lean into her personal damage. I think the most meta part of Nahida's kit, however, is her ability to grab harvestable items and flora around the map from a distance with her skill, which is just beautiful for farming mats or just ingredients. I think we've been wowed by the Fontanian meta for sure, and to be fair, Nuvalet and Farina are currently, as we speak, curb stomping everything in the game. However, Nahida was the apex of the meta prior, and hasn't lost her strength even in the slightest. Her ability to enable any and every ninja reaction in the game with ease, consistency, and flexibility, considering her short cooldowns but long durations on her abilities and buff, while also being a Dendro Catalyst user with pretty decent range, meaning she could just drive the team on her own, makes her the single best Dendro unit in the game and the pinnacle of the Dendro element itself. And with Animo being somewhat anti-synergistic with most Dendro teams, pulling Nahida means putting your VV carry on one side and Nahida's suppress a few buttons everything dies teams on the other. Nahida's worth as a unit is equivalent to that of an entire team, truthfully. And if you have any intentions on playing Dendro teams whatsoever and seriously clearing a miss with them, if you missed Emily's banner and you want someone to facilitate burning, or more importantly, if you're a new player, she can turn things around for you in an instant. Let's be real on this channel here, okay? If your account sucks, Nahida can save you, flat out. If you have a solid Hydro applicator on or off field, and Kuki Shinobu, Raiden, Nilu, or Toma, she can turn things right around for you. I pulled Nahida on my malnourished alt account for the express purpose of knowing that I'd pulled an entire team basically, and I only had to focus on building a second team once I got Hyper Bloom off the ground. Currently, I can clear 11-3. We're fighting for, floor 12 on that account, but still working on my Mualani team, still flushing things out with the Hyper Bloom team. We're getting there, but the difference is literally astounding. Now on that account, I'm investing into Tainari Quick Bloom and Mualani Burn Vape, mainly the latter since, more importantly, Dendro reactions scale with EM and don't require crit outside of damage dealers in teams like Quick Bloom or Aggravate. So it's a lot easier to invest in. Throw EM on one side and then stress over crit on the other. So if you level your Kuki, throw as much EM on her as possible, find some Hydro application, your final slot won't matter too much, then you can just watch everything die. And it's not only very fun, but extremely effective even to date. So to summarize, should you skip or summon Nahida? It's obviously a yes. Nahida is aged like a tree, barely at all visibly, and her height can attest to that. She's still just as good as she was on release. If anything, she's only gotten stronger, even in Fontaine with things like Liddy Burning, Ryo Melt, Nuvalet Hyper Bloom / Nuvalet Burn Vape, Grand Aggravate, Quick Bloom, Sethos Quick Bloom, and Aggravate. And these are only her new teams outside of the Sumeru era units that benefited directly from her presence on the team. I have no doubt she'll continue to see value until the day the servers shut down, being the Dendro Archon and all though. And what would you expect? If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to support the channel, let me know so I know to continue making content that you enjoy, Check out my previous Skipper Summon videos, there will be a playlist popping up on screen, and I will see you all in the next video.